All right. I believe this means we might be live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all sorts and shapes and sizes and persuasions. Welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series, coming to you this week solely on YouTube because yet again, the awful service that I use for co-streaming has completely borked. Just real bad. So I'm streaming directly on the YouTube. I have no idea what this looks like or sounds like. I hope it's coming through decently clear, and we'll just go from there. We'll see. Like, let's see if YouTube, like, well, if he's gonna use our streaming solo, maybe we'll prioritize him this week on the algorithms. And I seriously doubt anything like that is gonna happen. I need to make sure so I can see these controls saying everything looks and sounds good. Thank you for the mic check. We're gonna try just screen sharing here real quick. It looks like I can share my screen, so that still seems to function. I can't find some of my other tools, like what I would normally do to like build in chat and show that, but the chat's on the right hand side, so we can still hang with that. I'm gonna try muting my microphone now and taking a drink of coffee. As long as I can do that, we can do a show. So here we go. Okay. Yeah, woke up this morning, I set up the stream, I did everything like I normally do in Restream, put all the show notes and links and everything together, and then I went back into the broadcast room, and Restream just said, "No, we can't connect." I went through different browsers, I tried on my laptop, like anything else I could do to run the stream the way I normally do, and so there won't be any Twitch version of this stream. There's not going to be a LinkedIn version of the stream. It's going to be YouTube. As much as I'm trying not to put all my eggs in one basket, and as much as I'm trying to diversify, tech just keeps crushing my soul. And unfortunately, this week's news is going to be a little on the heavy side. We've got some cool stuff to talk about. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. I have housekeeping. We're running 15 minutes behind, but I just have to forewarn everybody. Look, I feel like this week we're going to have a little bit of a tech catharsis, and I'm going to try. I'm going to promise to try not to turn this into just one big like therapy session. But already seeing some cool faces and some fun names here in the chat. Simon says Hypno, Loco, Rudy, Jimmy, Fire Dragon, Bionic Scoop saying, what? What's up, Scoop? We got Darcy, we got Harold, RJ Uploads, Vazikos, Georgie. I'm missing some JGJ, Georgie, and Ron were the first three people to come on over to that new link. And that's the other thing that just kills me. It's like we've set up all this stuff, and there's a YouTube video project on YouTube that Restream created, but it's still a YouTube video project. There's no way for me to use it. I have to set up an entirely new link. Now, if it were Linus Tech Tips or MKBHD, I'd be allowed to put video in place. So you wouldn't have had to move to a different link. You see, that's like even when you're trying to play by the rules. Well, some YouTubers are more equal than others. Like, what would be the harm of giving us those kinds of content tools? It would make better content for YouTube. It would be better for their services, but they can't let us have that. Oh no, that's only if you're special. Control Alt Clay saying hello. So, why don't we knock out a little housekeeping? First of all, I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. We had a great weekend. Lex is finally into winter vacation. We got to hang out with some friends. We did a little softball clinic. It was really cute seeing some girls just like get out there and just kind of, kind of shake some of the rust off from the fall season. They're going to hit a movie today while I try to figure out how to keep a stream from completely crashing. So that's good. They're going to go have fun while I smash my face in my keyboard. So I hope you have been having a lovely week, had a lovely weekend, and that it just, I know it's that time of year and there's lots of pressure and lots of stress, and hopefully you're coming out of this okay, and that you're able to kind of keep getting through, because Sometimes stuff gets weird or sometimes stuff gets dark. So, to try and catch up and to get us through some of this heavy tech news, why don't we knock out just a little housekeeping? Last week was crazy busy for me. I actually got a lot of stuff out, but I want to just focus on sort of the big three. The really interesting projects that I got to work on. Two of them embargo. I kind of teased that last week on the podcast that there was a company who was releasing product and that I had hands on that product, but I couldn't say anything about that product because of the way that we do this embargo thing, this pre-release dance. And I want to see, let's see, screen share here. The biggie, the OnePlus 15R review, the best iPhone Apple won't sell you. If you want, we can spend a little time at the end of the podcast, answer some questions if you're curious about what like the OnePlus 15 or OnePlus 15R has had to offer. I've got this right here. It is a beautiful phone. If you like this kind of iPhone aesthetic, and I'm being cheeky in the best iPhone Apple won't sell you, but it's also kind of true because Apple killed what would have been one of the best iPhones, I think, of the sort of upcoming generation. And OnePlus seems happy to make sort of the best clone of that potential experience. Moving right along, I'm gonna skip. No, I've got them in order. I also got to spend some time with the OnePlus Pad Go 2. We talked about that a little on the podcast 2 weeks ago, where we were allowed to show that we had it. And then I was able to put together this video kind of talking about my experiences with it. It's a great mid-ranger tablet. I think it has a lot to offer in this kind of middle space. And then I'm going to be using this tablet to do just a little bit more comparison. So between both the OnePlus 15R and the OnePlus Pad Go 2, I'm going to be writing up experiences on the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 non-elite chip and the Dimensity 7300 that's in the OnePlus Pad Go 2, and that's going to be updated on the Patreon. All those new big geeky benchmark bar graphs are going to get updated. And then lastly, this video I've been sitting on for a little bit. If you were on the Patreon, it actually went early access almost 2 weeks ago. A fun twist on a mini PC, but with some concerns, the Soyon EX-R1 review. This is a smart speaker shell. It's a really tiny mini PC that looks like it could be an Alexa, but it's a full AMD 8745HS beefy little mini PC. I love what we can do with a mini PC. All these little form factors, like you can take some, bolt it to the back of a TV or bolt it to the back of a monitor and make your own iMac kind of setup. This one is really pushing into that territory of flexibility and an experimental design. What else can we do with a mini PC form factor? Why don't we turn it into the speaker hub that would be sitting in front of you right on your desk, and then you don't have to have like desktop speakers or something like that. I really like it when these companies experiment. They try something new with these little tiny components. We can cram them into different form factors and different shapes. But I've got some very significant concerns about how the unit was sent to me and also how the unit might be supported. So, especially for folks in my audience, if you're that kind of tech inclined and tech curious about what mini PCs can do, I think you'll share some of my concerns on how this product was sent out. That being said, I think there's still the potential for someone to look at that and say, hey, yeah, that is actually something that I would want to play with. And so I still put out the video. I still am giving it that kind of positive vibe because I like the presentation, I like the experiment, but with a few caveats, and those are all detailed in the review. Um, so Loco Rudy is saying, "Damn, I'm late again." Loco Rudy, we're all late this week. Messed this week up. Great. And then Hassam is saying, "Hey Juan, I think the OnePlus 15R is $100 overpriced." I really struggle with how we talk about price. You know what? This week is all screwed up anyway. If you'd like, and say so in the chat, because I know there's a little delay on the chat. What if we just talked about the OnePlus 15R right now. We want to do that. I have a video out. I have a review on it. My review is positive. I think this is a good competitive option for the realities of the market we face today. But we can go ahead and just jump in on this, and then I'll circle back. We can do some news. It's like I'm kind of putting off the inevitable because there is some stuff that I feel we need to talk about. Um, but OnePlus 15R, I see this a lot. One, yes, on the OnePlus 15 and the OnePlus 15R, if you're a savvy consumer and you understand the pros and cons and the limitations and the support, you can get these phones significantly cheaper if you import the Chinese versions and you put on a global ROM. That is absolutely something that a techie can do. I disagree with the assessment that because they're so cheap in China, that this is somehow like OnePlus is trying to screw Western audiences. I feel the realities of the global market today, how tech is being distributed, how imports and tariffs are being applied. There's fluctuation in pricing components, which we're going to talk a little bit about just in the whole wide scheme of the computer component market. Instability immediately puts pressure on price. So let's say OnePlus was selling at the almost zero margin that they were usually, and then there was fluctuation in the supply chain after they had already committed units at a specific price, then that would have put Oppo and OnePlus drastically in the red on every unit sold. So unfortunately, because of that, because they can't predict what's going to happen next week, let alone over 2026, you build in padding. And so we see inevitable price increases. We're going to see that with a number of different players in this market, especially when we're looking at the international flavors of Chinese manufactured devices. And then we're also going to see that play out in how conservative a company like Samsung might take their offerings in 2026. If they know, hey, this is going to fluctuate, RAM is going to get more expensive, chips are going to get more expensive, TSMC's fab this, Samsung's foundry that, well, instead of trying to make a better product to try and keep a price point similar, but maybe with a smaller price increase, they're going to either cut back on certain technologies or just coast on certain technologies. So I don't think any company is going to be perfectly immune to this. I think the one who can buffer it the best will be Apple, because Apple can roll over anyone and make these preferred manufacturing deals and tie up distribution. But even Apple can't fight the entire market glazing all over AI. So when we say the OnePlus 15R is $100 too expensive or $100 overpriced, Hassam, it's not that I disagree with you, but it's also the same thing as saying an iPhone 16 Plus was $400 overpriced. And I think we can be fair. I think that's a fair critique. If this is $100 overpriced, which means it should be like a $600 phone, then that's also what an iPhone 16 Plus should have been. That's also what an iPhone 17 Plus should have been. And that's where we see like the resale market on the new iPhone Air has plummeted at least 40%, somewhere around 45%. It's like half the price because it's half the phone. But our value, what we say is the manufacturer suggested value of a device, is somewhere around $1,000 for this kind of experience on an iPhone. So I feel this is a competitive option against Galaxy S25 Pluses a little bit. Cameras are going to be better on the S25 Plus. But performance and battery life, yeah, that's a competitive option against a Galaxy. I think it's a competitive option against what would have been the 17 Plus from Apple. And to me, that means, okay, in the realities of this market, those are $1,000 phones, and this is not a $1,000 phone. Obviously, a couple other little component choices and compromises too. It's not a perfect win. OnePlus is definitely struggling in this mid-range for some of those compute features that I really wish that they would give all of their devices. But I can also say if I were looking at a phone with crazy good battery life and wicked fast charging, punchy, fast, powerful, performant, good screen, an adequate main camera, well, that to me is about a $600 experience. So I am paying more than I think I should for that experience, but in the global market we face ourselves in, that is the cost of doing business. And then I'm still doing $300 better than I would be with this almost exactly same experience if I were going to buy an iPhone. So that to me is where I can still give this that sort of more positive that kind of positive look. I feel like it's still an appropriate um competitor. I can give it a positive review while acknowledging that a lot of us out there could probably do better with a little savvy shopping, right? It's just that if I want the best possible cases for software updates, support, if there's something wrong with the unit, if there's damage to the unit, if there's repairs necessary, stuff like that, even those subtle differences between Chinese flavor and global flavor can make that support more difficult. I mean, listen to some of us who have been importing phones for a while and like, oh no, I cracked the screen on my Vivo. Who knows and I'll be able to get that replaced or repaired, or what the process of gonna of that is gonna be sending it internationally, because there's no way for me to locally source that kind of support. So if I'm offering a phone to my auntie, I can still say this is kind of like what that iPhone would have been, but it's $300 cheaper. And auntie can say, well, I still want the iPhone, so I'll pay 30% more. Wait, no. I'll pay 50% more than this, a phone that is 30% more expensive. I hate doing like that kind of math in my head. So anyway, I had really good experiences with the 15R. There's some really interesting. I'm going to be sharing some of my performance notes very soon, probably tomorrow or the day after. I think there's some really interesting things happening. I also think 2026 is going to be a brutally terrible year for any kind of gadget. The realities of competition, the realities of the market, how expensive components are getting, how every company is trying to squeeze consumers while the economy is in shambles. I think we all just need to get prepared. Got to keep our heads down. We got to keep just kind of treading water and hopefully come out the other side of this with some sense of how to recover once parts of this market implode. And I'm hoping that it's a slow deflate. I'm not confident it will be a slow deflate, but if it's a sudden rapid burst, then boy howdy, hold on to your tech. Because it's going to get pretty wild as we hit that roller coaster ride. Um Simon says Hypno says Honor have been knocking it out of the park this year. Ron is saying maybe just too close to the 15 price. I mean, it is, but it's also really close to the 15 experience. Again, it's like OnePlus needs to answer this question, and I wish they would do this with better marketing. If you're going to launch two phones in a single year, I think you could do a better job of delineating what those experiences represent. When you talk about screen, when you talk about main camera, when you talk about battery and charging, you talk about CPU performance, maybe not GPU performance, they're so similar. So I don't feel like the prices should be drastically different when so much of that overlaps. But now it's up to OnePlus to say, hey, this is the category and this is the consumer and this is what we think this product has to offer. And this is the product and category and performance that this product has to offer. And that's why, hey, this one's a little closer. You can save a little money or you can step down, because in between these, you've also got last year's phones. And the OnePlus 15R inadvertently makes a really good case for why someone might instead choose a OnePlus 13R. And that's not a bad thing. It is okay to point that out and say, hey, if you want this, if you want the latest and greatest, if you're doing this on your phone, you can do that. But I think we've overly simplified every single tech review to this lowest common average consumer denominator. So it's impossible to get sort of the little nuances on why you might choose this or you might choose that. I think this year it's actually easier than ever. If you're worried about support, but you care about, huge battery life, like you want the best kind of daily battery life runtime, well, then you trade a camera sensor for that battery. And I think if you ask your family and friends, look at all of the iPhones and iPhone Pluses out there, obviously they're satisfied. they're sated with a 2-camera setup. That's pretty basic. Okay, I get it. You could go OnePlus 15R. If you think you'd want that sort of expanded experience and you're willing to compromise on some of the battery tech, you're not compromising much because that thing still has a wicked large battery. You can step down to last year's if you can still score one 13R. It's those little those little bits that I think kind of get glazed over because OnePlus is the whipping boy brand. All of the bigger channels are going to come out. Oh, well, there's the compromise. So no, I guess I can't recommend OnePlus again this year. And yeah, I get it. Yeah, if I had my druthers, I'd still probably be on the OnePlus 12. Literally, the macro photo performance of the OnePlus 12 would be enough for me to keep running that phone instead of the 13 or instead of the 15. But now I've been filling in. My SIM card will probably live in a Vivo this year. So I'm willing to trade 1,000 milliamp hours of my battery for one of the best camera experiences on a phone this year. And if we could talk about tech that kind of consistently, like you took the label off and you just showed me Samsung specs and OnePlus specs, man, we wouldn't have these chuckleheads with millions of subscribers like, well, but obviously you'd want to spend more on the phone that doesn't perform as well. I can't tell you why. Like, who would fall for that? Who would accept that as meaningful commentary except for satisfying the bias of an audience? And there's a much smaller audience for OnePlus owners. There's a reasonably large audience for people who still like to watch videos about OnePlus, but then be patted on the head that they were right to buy an iPhone. And that's what passes for tech commentary. Until we get better tools to educate consumers in the way that we can do in other markets with a little bit more entertainment or a little bit more savvy, this is the way it's always going to be. This is the way we're always going to talk about this stuff. Um, from Vin, which marketplace do you use to buy from China? So I use Wanda Mobile and GizTop. I've pretty good experiences with both. I tend not to go like, I mean, sometimes you can find some great sales. I only go AliExpress for things like accessories. And I, as much as I can, try to avoid marketplaces and storefronts on eBay. The only time I've been scammed on a phone purchase was trying to buy, import an international phone. I was trying to import one of the Sharp phones, and I got scammed. Lost a several $100s on eBay, and that one really hurt. Um, Oliver Lundstrom. Hey Juan, just want to do a quick update you regarding the Hala phone. They just detailed some specs, Dimensity 7000 series, SoC, etc. I'm still reaching out to them. I haven't heard anything back from them. I'm going to shoot their just main email on their website, another message just saying, hey guys, I like to talk about other competitive phones. Think it'd be pretty cool. We could have some fun. Jala, from John Gao, the OnePlus 13 and 13R's value is unbeatable now. Again, you have to get crazy granular. If there is someone who says, man, I wish my phone could run longer out in the field and I don't care about the camera, OnePlus 15, right? So that's or like OnePlus 15R. That's the kind of game you need to play. Is like who specifically is the right fit for this, and it's not Android users, very vague and broad. We got to like drill all the way down. It's that's how that's how brutal this next year of gadgets is going to be. 2025 was already tough for that, and 2026 is going to be way worse. Simon says, Hypno one, what phone in your experience has had the best macro performance? So, macro is tricky. Okay, you know what, guys? Here, we're going to get crazy camera nerdy for just a second. I'm going to try and sum up my thoughts here because I've been doing all these deep dives. I have all the samples, and I still haven't finished the Vivo X300 Pro because I'm using the Vivo X300 Pro. I just did. I'm doing a video. I haven't published it yet, but I finally have the retail units for. Oh no! I dropped the ring. I don't want to roll over that. It's plastic. I finally have the retail unit for the Halliday smart glasses. right? So these are heads up display glasses, little projector. I got to play with a prototype after last CES, and they finally have retail units shipping, nice packaging, really cute little carry case. I think this is a really interesting idea. It's not going to fit everybody because every face and eyeball is different, but I like this difference as compared to some of the waveguide optics. Most of the review and most of the B-roll, the only thing that isn't shot from the Vivo X300 Pro is just this talking head position. Everything else was shot from the phone. And I did some outdoor video, I did tracking, like being able to like pan and show you through the projector what the image looks like when you've got pop-up information in your heads-up display. Like everything was shot from a phone. It was so much easier to get all of that footage and to get all of that B-roll from a mobile device than from any of my nicer cameras. So when we talk about macro, we've got two issues. We want a good sensor size so that we get better pixel level detail and better low light performance. Because you can't always count on the bestest setup. And I'm not walking around with a ring light for my phone, right? I'm not carrying additional light. The little burst flash, more often than not, I feel destroys the photo rather than makes the photo. So the top two performers right now, in my opinion, would be Xiaomi Ultra and Vivo, either Vivo Pro or Vivo Ultra. When it comes to macro, I don't think there is a substantial enough difference between Pro and Ultra on Vivo. As long as we've got the Vivo massive sensor, we've got excellent depth of field and excellent lower light, mixed light performance. The Xiaomi Ultra, specifically right here, this is the 15 Ultra, uses a smaller sensor, which does not have as good dynamic range, pixel level detail, or low light performance, mixed light performance. But aesthetically, that's also what impacts a good macro photo. So on my Vivos, I've got this beautiful, huge, large image sensor on a periscope, but the image sensor is so large that part of the housing creates a rectangular box. It's this sort of cutout. It's not the full circular experience of the lens and the sensor. It kind of cuts into the borders of what the lens might occupy. Why would that be a problem? I mean, aren't a lot of things rectangular? Even the sensor itself is rectangular, but when you cut away at the lens like that, it impacts the quality of your bokeh. So the bokeh on these kinds of sensors gets really squirkly. So if you take a photo of out of focus Christmas lights, you're going to get these rounded, square, rounded rectangle things. At some angles, they start to look like Pac-Man ghost blobs. On the Xiaomi, it's a smaller sensor, it's the medium sensor, and it's not on a periscope. So the circular lens on that sensor fully occupies, and you actually get a slightly closer focus range. So the minimum focusing distance is a little closer. So you can kind of make up creamier, softer, more pleasant bokeh, but you can't use this in more challenging lighting conditions. The Vivo you can use in more challenging lighting conditions, but your bokeh, your background is going to be a busier, edgier, squared off look. It's really aggressive when you take a photo of a flower and then you look at the dirt or the leaves behind that flower, and it almost looks like a quilt patchwork. Like some bits of out of focus go vertical, some go horizontal, but you can almost see these lines squaring off in your background. So these are the top two options. The absolute best macro photos that you can get from a phone camera sensor with the aid of a little bit of an accessory. Right here. Absolute best, bar none, would be to take a phone like the Xiaomi 13 Ultra or 14 Ultra, where we had the variable aperture. Then you get a macro lens because we have these plates that have threads. I can screw on a lens, and then you stop down the 1-inch type sensor stunning. The macro photos from that combination, 13 or 14 ultra, stop down the aperture, add a macro lens of some kind, unreal. Just unbelievably good. Better than anything that I've gotten from my micro four thirds cameras with extension tubes. Like, I'd have to go to $1,000 lenses, macro lenses on my mirrorless cameras to beat what I could do with like a $50 lens and a $20 plate on a 13 or 14 Ultra. But if you're doing this accessory free, then yeah, it's still Xiaomi or Vivo IMO. That's my opinion on the bestest macro photos. I hate any ultra wide. Ultra wide macro on a phone looks like garbage to me. It blocks light. It's impossible to line up with your subject. You need a telephoto macro, and I think Xiaomi and Vivo still have the best. So it's pretty great. Um, who is it? From John Gao, are you going to get the Evan Realities G2? Not right away. I'm still fine with the G1, and actually one of the things I wanna see is now that the G2 are out, will the G1 still get supported? If they completely fall off and there aren't any new updates, because there are still things that need to be polished up on the G1s, then I can't recommend that as well. Because then it's like, oh, you're gonna buy these glasses, they're gonna have them out for a year or two, and then they're gonna come out with the G3, and then you're off support. So you're talking about $800 glasses, and the big focus is on AI interactions. Then no, I don't think that's great for the market. I don't really feel like that accomplishes what we want from a good heads-up display. I think that's not great. Simon says no. Thanks, Juan. Much appreciated. That was a lot of talking, so I hope it helped. So, everything we're going to talk about this week, all of the show notes, all of the housekeeping, all of the articles, everything will be posted on this week's blog on somegadgetguy.com. In kind of setting up the schedule for this week's show, I debated whether or not to make this the end of the podcast or the beginning of the podcast. Um, there's no good segue into this, and there's no good transition out of it. So please appreciate that I am in no way, shape, or form trying to be indelicate or insincere or insulting, but it's still one of those things that I feel our community needs to discuss and address, and it's happening in the absolute worst possible way, but it's still a piece of news that can hopefully inform and enrich and support the other people out there that we care about. Um, I did not know Lamar Wilson very well. I got to hang out with him once at some influencer dinner years ago where I was seated like off and to the side, and I got to share just like a couple brief exchanges with him. Um, I saw him very recently at a Sony event a couple months ago. Not a couple months ago, several months ago. It was maybe almost a year ago. And I didn't speak with him. We weren't friends. We weren't close. I can't claim to have had any great relationship with him, but we had the kind of tech awareness where I could give him a nod and he'd like give me a nod back, and that's what we were to each other. Getting to see who he was behind the scenes when the cameras weren't rolling, it hurts my soul so much to know that he's passed, a man my age. He was 48 when he passed recently. And to know that there was probably someone still hurting, that even when the cameras weren't rolling and he wasn't making his content and being an influencer and all the toxic things that we've done to our community, that was still him putting on a mask or him putting on an act. And it hurts in a very similar way to when we've lost other great performers. Like, it hurts almost to the level of like a Robin Williams. Not because, our tech influencers have that kind of impact on the global market, but it hurts in the same way that you don't know if he ever fully realized or copped how much joy, how much entertainment, how much people loved his sh- his persona, his image, his personality. I can't say I was a regular consumer of his content, but every time I would check in on something that he'd made or something that he was a part of or a podcast that he was on, you could see immediately why he brought so much tech joy to nerds like us. And so it's just with the heaviest of heart to consider, like what his family must be going through right now, and that he maybe never realized that that was the impact he had. We get so caught up in the daily grind, and are we looking at our numbers, and his videos weren't performing as well as they did years ago. And that's what YouTube does to us. That's what social media does to us. It's like your value or your worth as a human being is caught up in these metrics and this watch time. And the platform they have to punish you and take you away from your audience if you don't keep, you know, dancing and performing and jumping through hoops and getting those numbers and getting that ad revenue up. And we have to hope. I have no idea what might have been going through his head or what might have been going on in his life, but just I have that fear. I have that sadness that he came to the conclusions that he did based on these inhuman calculations from algorithms that decided for him what his worth was as a person, when I think if you asked anyone who watched his content, he was worth so much more. So it is another reminder out there that things are going to get dark. Things are going to get really dark. The entire system that we've constructed is kind of eroding and slipping out from under us. The way that we meet other fans and the way that we approach other enthusiasts and communities that we put time and effort into maintaining are increasingly being sort of devalued by these platforms. Our contributions are being devalued from these platforms. The platforms are acting like we should just be so grateful that they are giving us any opportunity to make content for them to get wealthier through our labor, through our work, through our viewership, our time, our attention, our lives. You spend your life looking at content like a podcast here or a live stream here. And I'm so frustrated that this is the week Restream went down, is I can't even talk about like make an effort, diversify. Maybe you should watch my podcast on Twitch because you can't even do that right now because of how terrible all of these systems have become. My heart goes out to his family. My heart goes out to his friends and his followers and his fans. And I hope this is seen as a bit of a wake up call that we need to do a better job of taking care of people. I end every single one of my podcasts saying, I want you to take care of yourselves so you can keep taking care of others and be that amazing tech neighbor I know you can be. And I try to live that too. And obviously, there's only so much we can do as individuals, but I think it's getting more important than ever to really try to live that as a life philosophy, that we're looking out for each other, that we're taking care of each other, because the systems and the platforms and the billionaires and the oligarchs and the politicians just aren't getting it done for us. I think we need to go from the grassroots up. We need to look out for each other. We need to take care of our neighbors. And it's going to be so much work, and so much work that's never properly acknowledged or thanked. But we're the ones who can do it. And if we don't do it, someone else will fill that space, but they're not going to take care of people. So like I said, I don't have a great transition out of this. I hope that people are finding their ways to deal with this news and to memorialize a really fun individual who hopefully isn't or wasn't in the kind of headspace that I fear he might have been, and that other things maybe were happening or there was something else going on. We'll never get the full story on something like that, which is why a story like this always feels so incomplete, and you never get satisfaction isn't the right word, but you never get the closure that you feel um, would help others. But we'll just have to kind of fill that in and for ourselves. So I want to move on. It's tough. Oh, like, and to the degree that this person touched lives, it was at least somewhat gratifying, or at least somewhat reassuring that when Lamar Wilson passed, like it made news. Like the first link that I saw was on People Magazine was talking about, hey, this is an individual that huge viewership and had this great community, and we say like, oh, kids want to grow up to be YouTubers, and now it's like anything I can do to talk my daughter, like, hey, you should be a lawyer. You should not do what dad does for a living. That would be a terrible idea. Not that I'm sharing this kind of news with her, but it just kind of reinforces how toxic we're in our parent circles talking about things like maybe we've really got to work together to keep our kids off social media. We've really got to work together to, like, hey, if you want to do funny little wacky dance videos, that's fine, but we're not putting them up on TikTok. That's not good for you or your brain. So, yeah, let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna take another drink of coffee here. Um, from Loco Rudy, I don't feel this is a problem of this generation, but I remember my grandma calling the landline to my aunts and uncle's house just to ask how they were doing. We need to give more opportunities. Again, I this one hits close to home because this is my age. We are the evolution generation. We went from landlines and corded phones and cassette tapes and 8 tracks and vinyl to the internet in our most formative years growing up. And I always feel like we're the generation that does the best job of translating between older and younger people. And to see someone go out like that is exceedingly difficult for me to wrap my brain around. And the only thing I can kind of come up with what you're talking about is like, we need to have that more organic one-on-one, something silly. Like I've started emailing my siblings again instead of everything being social media. It's like stuff like that. I'm trying to distill down to its most basic level in interactions. And I don't have great answers. I don't know what helps make this better for people who are hurting. And that hurts me. It's not great. So, moving right along, I do want to cover some politics and regulatory news. Uh, this one actually, I think John, did you send this one on the Discord, John Gao? I think you might have because I think you sent a link. I am so terrible at keeping track of who submitted news stories on my own Discord, and I should really be doing a better job of crediting the people who feed us really fun stories to talk about. But this is an interesting development that I think we need to keep our eyes on, and I'm going to detail 2 links real quick. First, I'm so annoyed. I'm gonna replace the link with the real link directly to TechCrunch, but MSN just kept getting in my way. So right now we're gonna see the MSN link on this. But Apple opens up its App Store to competition in Japan, written up by Sarah Perez over at TechCrunch. With this update, Apple's App Store revenues are being impacted in another major market due to anti-competition laws and regulations. Company already has to comply with Europe's Digital Markets Act, which previously required the tech giant to allow for alternative app stores and other changes. So in Japan, they are following the EU in mandating that Apple have some kind of method to allow for another store to do business on their mobile products. It's not just Apple. So when all of these outlets started saying, "Oh, like TechCrunch says Apple has to open up the iPhone," um, the other story, the bigger part of this story, this is coming as a range of broad, sweeping regulations across tech giants in Japan. This is becoming a much bigger deal than just Apple's App Store on the iPhone. And so what I'm gonna link, and I think this is what John oh, John shared the press release. So Apple had a press release which was like, "Well, to fix what the law broke, we're gonna do better security because if we follow the regulation, then your iPhone won't be secure." Which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. We've made our product so terrible that if you try to install software from another store, we can't help you or protect you. So to comply with this regulation, we're going to do our best to fix the iPhone with the problems that we gave the iPhone when we made the iPhone. PR speak, flowers and everything's great and Apple makes the most money. Hilarious. Thank you, John. Thank you for clarifying that. But this is an actual news broadcast from NHK World Japan that breaks down what actually is taking place across this entire regulatory push. It's not just Apple. Google is also they're mandating that Google maintain and supply methods for other app stores to do business on Android. So it's not just iPhone, it is all mobile devices. Now, this news broadcast is legit. It's like a 4-minute video. I've got it linked in our show notes. I want people to go and watch it because it does a really great job of summarizing what this new regulatory push entails and also what the challenges are because they literally have like one of these economic experts come out to this. The first thought I had in my head was, hey, it's cool if you mandate another app store can exist, but that doesn't mean anyone's going to do business with it. Immediately, what they said, hey, this is just the bare minimum of allowing for the potential of future considerations of competition. That's how low level the market impact on this is expected to be. But immediately off the top of our heads, I think we can think of a couple companies out there like Epic. If Epic has an easier path to doing business directly with gamers, that can help push the idea that other app stores can survive and other app stores can thrive. If it maybe gives the potential for better monetization through a platform like F-Droid and open source app developers can get better monetization and better payments for the work that they do as buy me a coffee links and maybe they can build a better framework for distribution, that's a first step. Anything that starts to chip away at this idea of helpless, apathetic dominance from Apple and Google makes all of our mobile devices better. At the same time, like people were joking about, it was a Jala holophone. I don't know if it's a hard J or a soft J on Jolla. Someone please school me in the comments on that. There are opportunities. We keep acting like these companies are institutions, that they're like monoliths, that they're indomitable, and they are until they aren't. And when we look at the potential of the far-reaching economic collapse that could happen because of this AI speculation, and we look at the erosion of consumer confidence, and we look at all of the potential avenues that these companies have shuttered competition before, there is potential for something disruptive to happen in this market. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how it hits scale. I know there's massive problems with consumer education and marketing, but that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity there. So we keep an eye on stories like these. Japan is yet another region, another country on the planet that is saying, no, we don't like how Google and Apple do business. It hurts their customers, it hurts their partners, their developers, and it hurts competition. The only thing that makes all this stuff better is better competition. So I think that's kind of interesting. We need to see how this plays out. And I really need to see, will Apple play stupid games? Right? They played really stupid games with United States regulators going after them for anti-competitive business practices. Tim Cook signed off on, well, if you pay for something off of the App Store, we still get a cut. And that really burned Apple. We talked about that last week. That court case finally played out to a conclusion where Apple lost their appeal. Now we need to see, does Apple think they have the muscle to try and pull something like that off in Japan? Because it doesn't seem like they're making a lot of noise about this kind of stuff in regions like the EU. So, kudos. Good. Right now, voting with our wallet puts very little pressure on these massive tech corporations. About the only thing that we have, the only way that we can utilize resources to make this situation better is now going directly to like attorneys, lawsuits, class actions, regulatory efforts, and to push our lawmakers to actually do something about inequity in the market right now. It's getting that dire. It's getting really bad. Oh, John Gao was asking about other things about bokeh and aesthetics on our phones for macro cameras. Well, John Gao, I do have a camera deep dive on the Ultra. If you wanted to know what the macro aesthetics and the lens performance was like on the Vivo X200 Ultra, I'm sure there's a video you could find on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. From Rob Aarons, yeah, I've been voting with my wallet for years, yet I lose more hardware features with each passing year. And I think we need to make a concerted techie push to do things like, hey, if your gadget has all the stuff you need on it, don't buy new. Repair, replace, recycle, like take money out of their hands. And I think it sucks because like it further consolidates the market in one way, but then we can create hopefully like that side channel or that side market that can start to influence other consumer spending behaviors. But again, it's going to be a really long battle. And the second we see a business practice that we want to support, we've got to jump out there and really make noise about it. We can't be these tech influencers that only glaze Apple and Google and Samsung and then be like, oh, but this phone has a headphone jack and a memory card slot and excellent performance and it's great at gaming and it's got cooling and all this really cool stuff, but I don't think you should buy it. Like, maybe wait till Gen 3 or Gen 4. No, we've got to like move these things off of their platforms and networks. Like, you want heads up display glasses. I really like my Vuzix. They're a dev kit. They are not completely polished. They don't have fancy animations and stuff. But if I want information up at eye level, they're the least expensive option to get there. And they're handy little sunglasses that are really lightweight. I'm not in Google's ecosystem and playing with Google's AI. I'm using glasses just to get my notifications at eye level. Maybe that's all we need to do. It's all right, John. We good. Moving right along. I need to reach out because I have a friend, Ricky, the YouTube tech guy who works at TikTok. And I need to ask him what's going on over there. This is coming by way of Reuters. China's ByteDance signs deal to form joint venture in step to avoid U.S. TikTok ban. Who wrote this up? David Shepardson. Hold on. The deal is a milestone for the short video app used regularly by more than 170 million Americans after years of battles that began in August of 2020 when President Donald Trump first tried unsuccessfully to ban the app over U.S. national security concerns. Financial terms of the deal, announced in an internal memo by TikTok, seen by Reuters, were not disclosed. Other details of the deal are in line with those outlined in September when Trump delayed until January 20th enforcement of the law that bans the app unless its Chinese owners sell it amid efforts to extract TikTok's U.S. assets from the global platform. What do I say? The new U.S. company will be valued at around $14 billion, Vice President J.D. Vance said in September. That was below analysts' estimates, and the final figures were not made public on Thursday. So this is just a hilarious and horrific romp through regulatory actions, legal actions, ownership, property, intellectual property, and it looks like Oracle's going to come out on top with sort of managing the infrastructure and the algorithm of whatever is born from this. Again, it's so wild to me because it's not just content. It's we're going to see US TikTok license Chinese TikTok algorithms until Oracle can build the framework around US TikTok's content feeding mechanism. There's never been a better time to get people off of constant doom scrolling social media. Like the opportunities and the concerns for just basically flooding this site with like state sponsored propaganda, which is hilarious because oh, it's a national security concern. Yeah, but I feel like the call's coming from inside the house on this one. The big concerns I have aren't what foreign actors are doing with this as much as what I feel this system can be co-opted to deliver internally, especially when we have so many sort of compromised officials running very high level departments. So the next step has arrived. I'm going to continue to cover this as a news story as it evolves. I'm really just curious to see. And again, I really don't use TikTok. I avoid YouTube Shorts. My use of Instagram has almost completely vaporized. As soon as these platforms go algorithmic video, I find almost no enjoyment, no benefit, no entertainment in that. It drives me crazy. I love photo sharing sites. I love scrolling Flickr because a photo pops up and then I scroll through that photo and tons of other photos follow. Is so much more immediate and intimate and interesting and especially when it's like I'm following photographers on Flickr. I don't understand even just like the momentary wait. So I flick to the next video. There's like a tiny little buffer. Something starts playing. It's almost certainly not something I want to sit through and watch. I don't understand that feeling. It's never been something that clicks with my brain. I wish I could find. I hosted a workshop for I forget what it was like social media fest or something like that. Man, it was so long ago. But the folks at Nokia, before Nokia was bought out by Microsoft, they wanted me to host a panel, not a panel. They wanted me to host a workshop talking about being a content creator and making content. And I felt terrible because I kind of stomped on this question, but this cute young woman pops up and go, "Oh, and what do you think about Vine? Don't you think this is going to be really disruptive and blah 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 this and really creative and short form that?" I kind of said like I don't really feel Vine has legs. I think after a period after some time, any other video streaming or video sharing platform can engage in the same kind of content. You can do vines on YouTube, right? So I don't really feel like just restricting content in one way really makes a platform successful. Look at like remember when we were all freaking out about a service like Clubhouse? Who in this chat has been on Clubhouse recently? Has anyone been listening in on Clubhouse? I genuinely don't know now that I've said this out loud if Clubhouse is still a functional service. So, years and years and years ago, I couldn't get into Vine because it was the same kind of delayed gratification investment in a potential, then I don't really dig it. I flick on to the next one. And every now and then you find something that's kind of cool, like, oh, that was a really cool kind of like boomerang video loop. All right, fun. And now it's just like hot take after hot take after hot take, and what I'm going to sit through. And oh, here's a clip of someone's stand up. And now here's a reaction of that. And I'm just sitting here looking at them do their stand up. And you're watching me watch the TikTok. And then I say something witty at the very end, like, oh, doesn't he have it so right, ladies? And you're like, why? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we watch this slop? And I'm not saying like people haven't done cool stuff on TikTok. I'm just saying TikTok is not like the platform, and the restrictions on TikTok are not unique. That person would have been making similar content on YouTube, might have been making better content on YouTube. Like if you just turn your phone sideways, maybe that would have made the footage better. It just drives me crazy that we're putting this much effort. We're creating a new babysitting company to manage TikTok in the United States. And before it's done anything, and before Oracle has its hooks in this social media platform, it's worth $14 billion. That's not real. And I don't really feel TikTok's impact on the market is worthy of Americans using the social media service equals $14 billion. And it also just makes something like Twitter even more laughable that Elon Musk, what was like $40 billion. And we know for a fact that that is already cratered. It is not worth that much. And he's paying himself with money from other shells in his shell game to keep some imaginary valuation of this high. And it's time and time and time again, we run into this situation where none of this is real money. It just impresses shareholders and investors. So I guess we'll just keep saying it's worth more. 170 million Americans use TikTok. Do they? Really? Is that the revenue and the profits? You're gonna tell me that that's a $14 billion company? I don't think so. I think that's a lie. John Gowno. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Never used it. Oh, a DTNL SGG Inc. is worth $3.5 million USD. Man, I wish it were. I hate to say it, folks, but in this economy, I would sell out so hard. Anyone who, let me just round it up. We'll round it up to the nearest million. Anyone who wants to give me $4 million, I will give you everything SGG. And you can take it. And I'll go write a book or work for a nonprofit. Actually, no, I would go and work for a nonprofit. I would immediately jump on the folks at US Perg and just say, you need a part-time freelancer video editor to talk about repairability. 4 million. It's a steal. I'll give you the keys to the website, the email address, the YouTube channel, all of my other social media stuff. You can take it and run with it. 4 million. Done and done. And that's even knowing that I'll get raked on taxes. I'm going to spend a little time on this story, but not a lot. I made a short because people watch shorts. I don't watch shorts. But it's like a 90-second video, and I feel like it really summed up my feelings on this. I was able to go concise enough that it made sense to do a short. I saw lots of headlines on this story. YouTube bans two popular channels that create fake AI movie trailers, written up by Ryan Whitman over at Ars Technica. I need to call out, though, so many articles, either in the headline of the article or in the content of the editorial, making these grand, like, oh, YouTube is making efforts to clean up AI slop. YouTube is shutting down these fake trailers because they're so annoying to everybody. Good guy YouTube, getting it done. And that is not what's happening at all. This is not a good guy YouTube. Let's see if my stream gets shut off while I criticize YouTube. Um, these two channels make a bunch of garbage movie trailers, right? If you go searching through YouTube and you're trying to find good content, you've probably run across absolute just garbage junk. And now increasingly, like it used to be, these channels just take existing footage from movies and trailers and recut them into new trailers to like tease a movie that never exists or isn't the movie that they actually had access to. Now it's increasingly more AI. So yes, I think everybody here would be on the same page. Less of that garbage, lying content, because it's just crap that gets in our way when we want to see like a real movie trailer. We want to find a video about a movie or like a movie review. There's this junk that's always in our way. It's always in our face. I think that's fine. I can appreciate, and I really do appreciate, channels like this should be removed. Sure, that's great. But YouTube isn't doing this from any magnanimous gesture or the kindness of their hearts. YouTube is doing this because Disney just invested $1 billion into OpenAI. And that's hilarious because we talked about this last week. $1 billion, and that's throwing money into a wood chipper. OpenAI is so underwater on their hosting, their server, their content, their IP, their litigation. $1 billion from Disney evaporates instantly. It doesn't even make a sizable dent in their current operations deficit. We could be talking like $15 billion in the red just dealing with data centers. So it's hilarious to me. Like Disney, a massive media corporation, coming in there, hey, we're giving them $1 billion. And that's innovation. And that's going to go towards no, that's going to be shoveled directly into a furnace immediately, instantly vaporized. But what will help OpenAI is Disney licensing their characters. 200 Disney characters are now being licensed directly so that you can use those characters in OpenAI generative AI products. So Sora Video now has access to these characters. And at the same time, Disney just served Google a cease and desist. You must remove our characters from your products, especially if it's like an AI generation of one of our characters. This is your official warning to remove that content from any of your products or services, or we're going to sue you. As you might imagine, a lot of these AI slop movie trailers heavily feature Disney products, Disney characters, Star Wars, Marvel, animated features. There's a lot of junk out there. So instead of trying to go video by video, you start with two of the biggest offenders, just wipe out their channels because there's absolutely no way they could survive content or copyright strikes anyway. And then YouTube is probably going to start going through and finding any other examples of Disney products, Disney characters, especially for AI generated products, and just scrub them also from YouTube, just remove them from the site. So this is really, YouTube is fine with AI slop. YouTube wants more AI slop so you can keep scrolling your shorts, like my short. When I make a short, it's me talking into a camera. I really need to use more AI in my YouTube shorts, and then YouTube would like it better. But they're not doing this out of any kind of grand positive gesture. This doesn't make YouTube better. YouTube is still going to be full of horrific garbage AI slop content. Maybe this staves it off a little bit. Maybe YouTube won't be as bad as Facebook currently is, but it's going to be either really close or eventually catch it. It's the only thing that these companies seem to be able to generate some kind of interest or some kind of engagement consistently with their AI products. Microsoft is struggling. No one's paying for Copilot and 365 increased subscriptions. Anytime you say AI is in a game, that game gets savaged by the gaming community. It's a very big, ugly red mark against the game. We tend to appreciate good content made by human producers. And what do we have left? Garbage, slop, political lies, misrepresentations of reality, goofy, wacky scenarios. I saw another one where it was like reporters joking about a sketch artist, a little kid sketch of their missing father. And you're like, these humans don't act like humans. And this wouldn't have been a news broadcast. And the follow up didn't make any sense. Like it was supposed to be another broadcast on another day. And then they showed the father. Like it, it's not fun. It's inorganic, inauthentic. It feels hollow and fake. It doesn't come with any benefit. It's like I'm malnourished, so I'll eat sawdust. I feel full, but I'm not nourished and I'm not feeling better. So this is kind of where I'm at. My short was much better presented and more articulately sort of organized, but I had feelings on it and I wanted to make sure it was included in this week's rundown. I can't I can't handle all of the sites that are like, "Good job, YouTube, get rid of that AI slop." You're like, "That's not what's gonna happen here at all." Show me all of the Google tools and products and services that have come out to radically weaponize and massively increase the amount of AI slop video generation. Google is at the forefront of wasting our time with garbage content. It's just so blatant. It's so apparent right now. Simon says, no, the amount of AI poop on YouTube is brutal now. From Hikari, those guys were more creative back then, editing together random clips. Now it's just low effort AI. I mean, some of those, I mean, like you would see something kind of interesting. Like, here's a concept, a trailer that we think would be fun for a future movie. And they took clips from existing movies and did really funny things to re edit them. I get it. But that's the kind of stuff that still, even when it was more earnest work and more creative, still pissed me off. Because I'd want is like, oh, is there really a new trailer for the next Iron Man film? Oh, no, this is fake. It was almost like Rick rolling, right? You kind of like roll your eyes and then like I guess there isn't a real trailer now. I just don't care. Aditi Anil also backing up Hikari, though. Honestly, the recut and re-edited versions of pre-existing trailers for fictional movies is an art. Granted, the disclaimer is made as clear as possible, kind of like the AMVs of old. I mean, again, that's not what they were doing, though. It wasn't like this is a fake trailer. It was always presented as something real, which is what would piss me off. Is the again, it's in earnest. Unearnest, not earnest. I don't know what that word is. I made up a word or two. They're not good words. Oh, Darcy, same thing. Darcy says music videos. So many AI music videos, even from artists I think are cool or I thought were cool. And that's such a bummer. You see just something like I've been shown like, my daughter grew up on old music videos, especially like OK Go, fun, experimental music videos. She really liked the Foo Fighters because they used to make a lot of really fun, creative, wacky, and silly, tongue-in-cheek kinds of music videos. And then you show her something like, here's TLC Waterfalls. Like it's a really good music video. Here's like Janet Jackson and Rhythm Nation. Here's Michael Jackson. Here's just some classic rock. Even just going all the way back to like the floating ethereal heads of Queen for Bohemian Rhapsody. So many brilliant experiences and so many experimental short films created from the expression of music. And it is a bummer because you could see like, oh, we had this cool idea. It would have been really hard to do. It would have been really hard to shoot. It would have been really expensive to produce. So now we just did it in AI. And it doesn't have the feel. It just doesn't have the same respect. I totally get that too, Darcy. From WX Romer Juan, AI is a great tool for troubleshooting compatibility problems with hardware and software. So this is another thing we've been talking about on the Discord a lot is or actually no, not only the Discord, there was like a whole riff that we had on the private chat on the Patreon too, is we keep taking these systems for organizing large chunks of information and we keep trying to turn them into creative content generating machines. If it's vibe coding, if it's music, if it's art or photography or video. And when you use one of these systems to just analyze patterns, absolutely incredible. And it's the same thing where I've been saying, like a lot of on device AI stuff is really fun to play with. Run a little LLM on your laptop, or what kind of subject identification you can do in photo editing. Like how quickly I can do like a cutout in some of like a photo, right? It's a long press on my phone screen and I can generate a cutout with a transparency and turn that into a sticker or a thumbnail in seconds. That amazing. That kind of stuff is so cool. I love seeing that sort of evolution of machine learning tools where we had a camera in a Huawei phone that could generally determine if you were pointing your camera at a pet, a landscape, a flower, or some food, right? It would try and change up filters and exposure and processing if it was a food mode photo or a pet mode photo. So that kind of machine learning evolved into scanning information or tracking video or doing these really interesting things is awesome. And none of that requires a data center. None of all of that can be done locally. Very low compute threshold for something like that now. Awesome. I love it. We can use this in science, in research, in medicine. But what it's not good at is being a doctor. It's really good at helping a doctor find patterns in data, running a trial, you're running a huge survey, you're trying to organize information on the responses that people give. Amazing. You're using that as the interface that a patient says, hey, I've got these symptoms. What disease could it be? Awful. Don't do that. Real bad. So again, it's like we're trying to use these tools in ways that are really not appropriate for those tools. A bunch of Rickroll jokes coming in right now too. Let's keep moving. This one is just wild to me. I almost don't want to bring it up because it's one of those things like, hey, if you saw someone stealing food at the grocery store, no, you didn't. But it's kind of the tech file sharing version of that. And I don't like digging too much into like torrents and video and movies and music and stuff. But this is a crazy story. First article I caught of it, written up by Adamya Sharma, but also was shared by Dave Burns on the Discord. This is over at Android Authority. The internet just made a 300 terabyte copy of Spotify, and the article was just recently updated with a reaction from Spotify. So early this morning, Spotify has shared the following statement with Android Authority addressing Anna's archive claims of scraping the platform at scale. Quote, an investigation into unauthorized access identified that a third party scraped public metadata and used illicit tactics to circumvent DRM to access some of the platform's audio files. We are actively investigating the incident. Now, um, Anna's Archive is one of those sites that I think lives at the periphery, that lives at the edge of the most gray market tech that consumers can easily access. Excuse me. Been a big fan of things like Internet Archive. I think Internet Archive is a very interesting project that can serve a lot of useful features in modern society that can kind of contribute to discussions in the way that a library might contribute to a community, especially when we look at things like the Wayback Machine, where you can take a sort of a sample of a website, freeze it in time, and you can archive it. Archive.org, right? The Internet Archive. Anna's Archive, I feel, has a similar forward-facing message and mission. We are trying to archive the art of society, but I feel they're also going about it in a way that is trying to directly challenge the established systems we have for protecting IP and for monetizing content. I want to make it clear, I feel those systems need to be confronted. I feel we are long overdue some practical, grown up conversations about how we monetize IP, how we protect intellectual property, how we put guardrails on someone's labor. Someone writes a book, I think they should get paid for their book. But I also feel they should get paid for that book by submitting that book to every library on the planet. So every library has a copy of that book and the author was paid for it. And then anyone who wants to read that book can read that book. I feel like there are these massive issues with how we distribute content, how we distribute information, and especially in an era where now everything is turning into a subscription. Your music is a subscription, all of your TV shows, your movies, your books, everything is something you have to pay for always, and you never get to own anything. And Anna's Archive will step up in a way where you can acquire some of this media and not pay for it at all. And this is where I still have this internal conflict. Increasingly, I've become the biggest fan of buying the movies that I really care about the most. And I run a little Plex server, which is not so little anymore because I've been doing this for a really long time. And I've got a crate in my storage unit, just full of shiny plastic discs. A bunch of them have probably disc rotted. A lot of them probably aren't viewable anymore, but I still have the disc, which technically means I still have a license to view that content. I just maybe have circumvented their way of protecting the content on that disc, but I'm not distributing that content to anyone else. I'm not sharing that content with anyone else. So I've drawn my line in the sand for what I think is appropriate and fair. When it comes to something like, I'm going to out myself here. There was a movie with Lee Pace directed by Tarsum Singh called The Fall. And for the longest time, The Fall was out of print, was just not being made anymore. I think it is a beautiful love letter to storytelling. I think it is a visually incredible movie, and if you now it's easier to get your hands on. But for a long time, it wasn't. So I had a ripped copy that I got from a DVD at the library. And I couldn't just buy it, or I would try and find it on like eBay, and I didn't want to pay like $50 to someone to get a copy of it. And I eventually made that choice for myself that because this was horrifically difficult to acquire in a reasonable and legal way, I am going to be an archive of the movie The Fall for my own personal consumption. Now it's gotten a re-release on Blu-ray. I have it. It's not above my head, but I got another because I wanted an even better quality version of it because the movie is just visually incredible. But that's sort of again the threshold, the line in the sand that I've kind of carved out for myself. Um, I have feels on Anna's Archive. I appreciate the philosophy of the disruption of the platform. You go to Anna's Archive, and if you're pretty good at searching for the stuff that you want to find, you can find a lot of stuff on Anna's Archive, and it never seems to have risen to the visibility of even archive.org or any of like the old school like file sharing sites. But it is just sort of a directly hosted archive of books that you can troll through. So this is very surprising to me that they're making noise and that there's so much noise being made about them scraping Spotify. The entire collection of music on Spotify to the tune of 300 terabytes of torrents out there now. So they're trying to make the access of the music separate from their website. But this is going to bring more attention to their website. Where, and someone please correct me if I have this wrong, because I have not used Anna's Archive to download books this way. I'm a big fan of things like Humble Bundles. Um, that if you go to Anna's Archive, you can directly download from individual servers, but it's not Anna's Archive hosting that data. So that's their little separation of protection. We know where this file is. We're just a search tool. That's what Anna's Archive is. And then there's another server somewhere out there where you can download a file. That's on them. You would have to go after who is hosting and providing the content. All we are is a way to find where that content might be. So I think they're trying to do the same thing with Spotify. They are not hosting 300 terabytes of music. They are simply a tool to access the location of where that music might live. But I think that's really going to call into question, how do we protect IP currently? It's going to weaponize, I think, the outdated methods of protecting intellectual property. And then it's going to start this industry lawmaker quest to then also go after things like torrent trackers. I I don't see how this plays out well for Anna's Archive, archive.org, any site that collects torrent tracking information. I think this brings a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention to something that was kind of flying under the radar. But now you've got Spotify involved, and Spotify doesn't want to pay their artists. They want to keep all the money that they made off of other artists' work. So they're going to come down heavy on the lobbying. They're going to aggressively push their podcasters to go after these types of platforms and services and this type of content distribution. It we are rapidly approaching this tipping point. Is what is the value of someone's creativity worth? What is the value of someone's content? How do we how do we keep getting new stuff? You want a new comic book? What does that cost? Because I really am pushing back hard against the idea that I'll pay forever and own nothing, but then I need to factor in, well, then what is it worth if I'm only gonna buy it once? How does that artist survive forever? How do they keep creating art if I'm not constantly subsidizing someone else's lifestyle? And that breaks my brain because I do not have good answers on any of this stuff, but I feel the current system we have is woefully antiquated and isn't serving the actual creative people making this stuff. It's only serving the massive corporations that have found ways to distribute and monetize other people's work. Spotify, I have no fond feelings for. Like, again, I pay a yearly subscription for Qobuz, one license, so we can listen to one stream of music at a time. I share it with my wife. Sometimes she's out working out and I can't use Qobuz, but Qobuz does a better job of paying out rights holders. Not perfect, but I like that better. And it's been a good enough music discovery system that, once a month, every other month, I'll buy an album and put it on my Plex. And I have again, now I have a music collection where if we decided not to re-up Qobuz, we'd be pretty good for a while. And we could just take the money that we would have been paying Qobuz or Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon or any of these other platforms and then just go buy an album a month. We're kind of already doing that anyway. Actually, I should talk to Marie. What if we just let Qobuz go? That's $120 a year we don't need to spend. So anyway, this story is crazy, and if you have 300 terabytes of storage space just lying around, you too could also not you too the band, you also could be Spotify. You could just be all of Spotify right now. You can just do it. All you need is um what like 10 you'd need 15 220 terabyte drives. Well, actually you'd need 15 22 terabyte drives. Totally cake. I wonder what the math on that would be now, because like spinning hard disks, like it might be one of the safest purchases that we can make in tech components right now. But if you really only needed to power, let's just round it up, like 20 hard drives. I don't think that. Again, you wanted to make a music server and have all the music. That wouldn't be crazy inaccessible. Oh, Loco Rudy is saying, no, not Anna's Archive. But again, Anna's Archive isn't hosting 300 terabytes. They're just acknowledging the existence of ways that you can acquire 300 terabytes of music. um, oh, Loco Rudy goes on. Honestly, I came across Anna's Archive during unemployment where I really could not afford the $200 book for one of my classes. I found it at Anna's Archive, allowing me to continue my course. And that is a very common story. Excuse me, whenever Anna's Archive is brought up, that seems to be one of the main, like, students going there to find books that are otherwise priced out of their ability to continue their studies. Lots of people have had that experience. I once, for a psychology class in college, took the book Had a friend who worked at a Kinko's. He looked the other way while I just photocopied the entire book, and that was still cheaper than buying the book. So I took the book and returned it before that window where I would have lost like a ton of value because that book went from like $100 in early 2000s money to like, we'll buy it back from you for $10 at the end of the semester. Like such a scam, right? Is like 95% devaluation on this critical textbook that you need, and I just couldn't that one semester. Took it, photocopied everything. It was cognitive psychology, a class that I almost flunked because I freaking hated the idea of how cognition was presented by that teacher in that class. I just radically disagreed with almost everything they had to say. So, Sulin, oh man, my Unraid server is only 40 terabytes. Be right back, going shopping. I love it. I love it. So, the reason why I'm bringing that up is I don't know how much time we want to spend on how terrible the market is right now. I feel like I got started late. I can't run super long on this week's show, even for having started late. But I've been making jokes throughout this entire podcast. Last week and the week before, we were talking about RAM prices skyrocketing. So much of the memory that goes into our systems is being funneled into data centers now. So instead of making DDR for consumers, they're making what is it called? There's an acronym about bandwidth. Someone please drop that in the chat. I was about to say ECC. That's not the RAM because that's still like a DDR variant that just goes into workstations, but it's like for servers. HBM. Thank you, Tanmay. High bandwidth memory. Man, brain, Swiss cheese. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And you were fast. That was quick. So HBM is redirecting. So what would have been consumer grade RAM is being redirected into server and data center RAM, and it's just putting this huge crippling pressure on the consumer market. So much so, we talked, Micron canceled Crucial as a consumer facing business. There's not going to be any Crucial RAM. A lot of people out there trying to put some kind, I was initially somewhat not positive, but somewhat buffered in my response. Like, yeah, they're not going to sell Crucial, but maybe they'll still sell memory chips to other labels. Like if an ADATA RAM was using Micron RAM, maybe they'll still sell to ADATA. Increasingly, it looks like to me, the more I read into how this shift is occurring, literally just the amount of silicon these companies are chewing up to make all of these components, they're not going to have the consumer DDR to sell to other suppliers. They're really just trying to occupy as much of the data center side of this as they can. So I think things are going to get way worse before they get better. On top of that, the other news that we've been sharing internally on the Discord and on the Patreon, NVIDIA plans heavy cuts to GPU supply in early 2026, reportedly 30 to 40% cut in GPU production early next year. So, just as GPU prices were starting to level off, they still aren't good values at MSRP, but they weren't selling radically above MSRP. And a lot of them, like the 5070s, the AMD 9060s and 9070s, we were starting to see them sell under MSRP, which is the way things should be. When I review phones, I categorize by MSRP, and then we say, but buy it on sale, right? If I hold up this phone, this phone is a $1,300 phone, MSRP. But guess what? You could buy it for during Black Friday sales. Not $1,300. But I'm getting away from the main story here. NVIDIA is looking to do the same thing that memory manufacturers are doing. They see there is this wild constraint on a component that is causing prices to skyrocket. And then you have jerks like Sam Altman out there saying OpenAI is just wholesale buying as much data center RAM as they can. over 2026, if they get their way and they can keep scamming investors into higher valuations and more investor funding, they estimate OpenAI will eat up about 40% of the global RAM supply over the next year. 40%, almost half of all RAM is going to go to OpenAI, who can't pay their server and data center bills, has no viable product right now. They have no viable business model, revenue strategy, profit strategy. They are deeply in the hole. They got a whole $1 billion from Disney. How fast do you think that $1 billion is going to go up when you're buying 40% of the world's RAM? It's going to go quick. This is throwing terrible, good money after terrible, terrible investments. So NVIDIA, of course, sees all this and says, well, why not us? GPU prices are starting to level off. Now's the perfect time to cut production. They're going to focus on their data center business, more of their infrastructure, more of their capacity are going to go to servers, to cloud AI. And, it's fine if consumers get hit. Who is it? Zuckerberg just bought 1 million compute units from NVIDIA. That's 1 million consumers that would have had to have voted with their wallet to veer that. And if 1 million people decided not to buy current NVIDIA GPUs, then that just emboldens NVIDIA to say, well, now we see people aren't buying right now. We have to go where the market goes. We have to sell to the military, and we have to sell directly to governments and get taxpayer dollars directly. The taxpayers aren't giving us their money in retail channels. We need to take their money directly from the government. So it's like a lose-lose no matter what we do. But increasingly, this is yet again, if your system is hanging on, my system is just hanging on. I really need to replace this Threadripper. It's an older system. It's still getting my work done, but it's not what I could be using. I'd much rather prefer to update, get something a little fresher, something that uses a little less power, a little less electricity. It'd be nice. It'd be really nice if I could make that jump. Can't make that jump right now. And anytime I get close, something like this happens where the RAM prices skyrocket or the GPU prices set to rise, and I just can't buy ahead of the next major global catastrophe. So I'm very disappointed in NVIDIA. There's an opportunity for AMD to come in and say, hey, we've got great performing GPUs for gamers at reasonable prices. Maybe they score 10% less in your favorite game, but you can actually buy them. But I'm afraid that this is going to be the push AMD sees as they need to get bigger in the data center space too. Right now, they're kind of irrelevant in the global AI scene. They're making a lot of headlines about the ways that they're improving, and there has been some push for that kind of market presence. But when we really look at what companies and countries are buying up to do their AI, it's mostly NVIDIA. That seems to be the big, um, the momentum. The momentum seems to be with NVIDIA. I think AMD has the potential for a really good short-term win with consoles and with gaming PCs, but not in the enthusiast, I built my own system, but in the Steam machine kind of, let's just put all the components in on an APU. If we can turn the gaming PC into more of a console, like the Steam machine looks to be doing, AMD is definitely the major beneficiary of that. AMD has that market on lock. Like for every single Intel handheld portable PC gaming machine, there's like 6 permutations of AMD boxes out there that actually perform better and get better battery life, right? So I think that what we could see happen is the higher tier HEDT, high-end gaming system enthusiasts get fed up of subsidizing all of this, business seeing all these costs rise, seeing all of their hobby get just increasingly ratcheted. And then the next time they go to buy something, they say, hey, you know what? Maybe this gen, I just go good enough. I'm not going to try and force my way into an AMD 7000 series CPU and an AMD 9000 series GPU. For $1,000, I've got a great 1080p gaming machine. Maybe that's what I need to buy. And then they just move directly into something that's like an AMD APU kind of pre-built for that purpose, and that's where the market goes. I think there's opportunities here for ARM machines to step up. Excuse me, with tablets and portable handheld gaming machines. I'm still putting my money towards a Steam frame as soon as a Steam frame can be available for purchase. I'm getting increasingly anxious about what that purchase price is going to be, knowing that Valve has to cover increases in RAM and storage costs. But I think we now are going to start seeing an entirely new tier of this experience is good enough. I'm tired of trying to fight and to fight and to fight to get to, 4K 60 frame per second raster, right? Maybe it's good enough that I'm kind of 1080p or 1440p. That's fine. That's like the gaming PC behind my TV is capable of playing a few newer games at 4K, but more often than not, I just stick to 1080p and get radically faster frame rates. And I'm good with that. A racing game at 1080p, but at like 120 frames per second, I think looks better than a game at 4K floating at like 40 frames per second. So I'm good, right? That experience is good enough and is kind of better than what I would need to spend a lot more on to kind of improve a few of those metrics. And I think NVIDIA is going to rush us there even faster. The folks at Gamers Nexus have another sort of investigative piece just talking about the different markets and the permutations. A lot more information on the RAM and the companies manufacturing those parts and pieces. I think one of the interesting things they bring up is the idea of cloud PC. That this is going to be the one of the first steps in pushing people to just constantly lease a server side computer. I don't think we're there yet, but I definitely see the path we could be on where someone says, hey, you know what? I can't build this new workstation. I need this level of compute power. I can definitely get it for a short period of time. I'm going to rent that from a server. NVIDIA will sell me time on a server that equals the performance of a 4080. Great. I'll do that. But the costs on that get crazy very, very quickly. After a couple years of using that level of compute power remote, you've definitely outspent what that system would have cost to build. And again, I'm sitting here on a Threadripper feeling upset that I can't build something newer, but I am sitting on a bucket of compute power that is still pretty decent, right? It's hard for me to feel too bad about my situation. Woe is me, pat myself on the back and pat my head and kind of wipe away my tears. Sure. Um, but I've also been sitting on the system since I was at Newegg, right? So what is that? 6 years, 5 years, something like no, yeah, it's about 6 years. I feel like I've done pretty good for the amount of time and money and effort that I put into building this system and the amount of work and money that I've generated from this system. I just wish I had a better upgrade path from this system into something newer that would then also hopefully last me another 6 or 7 years. I like to try and build ahead, but I don't think we'll be able to do that in the coming years. Um, sorry, I saw a few of these comments here from Aditya Anil. Radeon, buy one, get one free. I don't think they're going to be hurting. I think once NVIDIA supply is kind of eaten up, enthusiasts will jump on AMD cards if the price to performance is in their favor. I think it's AMD's game to lose if they also start increasing prices or if they let retailers scalp consumers. That's going to burn. Because then it's going to be, well, if the AMD card is almost as much as the NVIDIA card, I should just keep doing business with NVIDIA. It doesn't help them. From Tanmay Panari, Is it Tanmay? You are forgetting AMD EPYC is also being the platform of choice in data center. No, they've been doing really well, but again, I'm an ARM nerd, and ARM is increasingly chipping away at both AMD and Intel in the x86 data center space. Increasingly, when we see some of these massive complexes being built, Google just makes their own chip, right? NVIDIA is making their own compute units. That's where we're seeing this sort of strategy um, fracture. There isn't just one idea of an x86 server and it's AMD versus Intel. Companies are able to now start making bespoke systems for their exact needs, not just trying to fit their operations within the paradigm of AMD or Intel chips. And that is again increasingly putting pressure on the entire global market because who's going to make that chip? You've got the design, and then you go to TSMC or your Twitter and you go to Samsung. Like increasingly, we're seeing this on all sides. So even in the server space, it's not as cut and dry as AMD doing great. There's going to be competition and pressure that is also going to increase prices not only for the platforms that utilize those kinds of servers. Those costs are then going to be passed down to consumers. We get to foot the bill no matter what. Ron GKP. All this and Windows 10 no longer supported. Man, you just really got to kick us when we're down, Ron. DT Anil, the P in 1080p stands for poor. Um, yeah, we're playing a few new games, like the new Sonic racing game, and it immediately recognized the resolution of my TV as 4K. And man, my old little it's a ninth gen Intel chip. It was an old Nook Extreme, and I managed to cram in a 2080 Ti. Is not the best system, but for a behind the TV uh, gaming machine, it served us pretty well. But it fired up the new Sonic Racing and Sonic Cross Worlds and went to 4K, and I was getting like 25 frames per second. And you're like, you can't play a racing game at 25 frames per second. So I go into the Windows settings and I kick everything down to 1080p, and it's doing like 100 frames per second pure raster. And it's like, oh, this game is so much more fun at lower fidelity, and it's not that different. They're cartoony kart racing characters, right? It's like the Sonic version of Mario Kart. No, I'm good. I will happily say 1080p stands for poor. I'm poor. I'm not poor. That is an awesome little machine to have behind my TV. I need to shut up and acknowledge my privilege here. It's pretty rough out there. From Vasicos, maybe we'll see NVIDIA Tegra again. I don't know that NVIDIA is looking at anything consumer. I think they're giving up on us as consumers. They are in a post-consumer market. They don't need individual end users. They don't need gamers. They're going directly to governments to fund data center systems. So I think they're done with us. I think there's momentum. There are definitely parts that are still going to be made, but if they can cut their GPU manufacturing in half and make more money on fewer parts, that's just the writing on the wall they need to say we can walk away from this. And if you want your NVIDIA gaming experience, then you can lease a cloud GPU, and that's going to make their financials for consumer facing. I think a chip like whatever that chip is in the Nintendo Switch is probably one of the last examples of a consumer facing ARM part from NVIDIA. And look, that chip's already out of date. The performance of that chip is already behind what you can get in a modern phone. In fact, like 2 years behind what you can do with a modern phone. If you could just add active cooling to a phone like the Red Magic, you could have a beefier gaming system with last year's chips than what you could do with the Nintendo Switch today. So, what incentive does NVIDIA have to really push in the consumer space if they can make a ton of money off Nintendo with an out of date chip and they're just going to go to cloud everything for the rest of their consumer strategy? They want more data centers, so you will use more cloud services. I think it's a losing proposition in the long term, but it's impressive to it's impressive to investors right now. Kevin Pitts, I'm still rocking the NVIDIA Shield with that Tegra. I mean, again, it had some life in it, but I think, you'd be pleasantly surprised if you could start turning that gaming experience over to newer systems and platforms and stuff. I was just messing around. Like I pulled out the Razer, that little Razer mini gaming tablet. It's roughly as powerful as like a Snapdragon 888, and it is such a cute little portable slate for playing games on. And I really wish that they had found a little bit more success there. Like spreading that idea out would have been a lot more fun. Tanmay is saying NVIDIA has a laptop form factor, MediaTek ARM plus NVIDIA GPU chip, but Microsoft's Snapdragon exclusive partnership is the fly in the ointment. That'd be interesting to see. If you could get like a newer Dimensity paired with like, I don't know, something like a 5060, that'd be really fun. The performance on that would be really good for your daily compute use, and then you could crank up that GPU when you needed a little more horsepower. Um, oh, JGJ, definitely some good points on shopping in the used market. Maybe not just for laptops, but for those not needing the latest and greatest. I see car used market is the way to go right now. That might happen with our computers too. It's tough because it's like, man, what am I buying? How am I buying it? What kind of life has it lived? It's tough. Like I could sell you one of my cameras, right? I have a Lumix G9 here. It has a ridiculously low shutter count. Is that what you're going to base your purchase on? Because this thing has been used for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of video. So what is the wear and tear on a camera and a sensor and the components internally and the number of times I've gotten it to overheat when I'm doing a live stream with the folks at All About Android, right? Or Android Faithful. Um, was that wear and tear on the camera? This thing only has like a couple hundred shutter actuations for a camera this age. It must be a really good buy. But I don't know if that's wear and tear on the camera, doing this quantity of video on a mirrorless camera. And same thing, that GPU has been used in like a mining rig from back in the day versus like someone who just gamed on it. I definitely take the gamer unless I could see like the fans were clogged. Anyway, I'm getting way off track here. It's just I don't see a good conclusion to this. We want this market and this system to kind of deflate, but I don't think we want it to outright burst. But I feel we're running right up to the cataclysmic failure of real estate, government infrastructure, electricity, water resources, and massive land deals. And that's what people seem to want. And I don't get that at all. So we're getting to the end here. I'll be curious to see if this makes any big splash in the market. Samsung took the wraps off of their next Exynos. I really haven't felt Exynos chips were much worth talking about, but it seems like they're pulling a MediaTek. And the new Exynos 2600, they're billing it as the world's first 2 nanometer chip, but they're utilizing the new C cores that we just saw in the Dimensity 9500. My experience with those C cores has been a little conflicting. Some things have gotten better, some things have kind of stayed the same, and some things have gotten a little dicey when we look at the new C1 Ultra, C1 Pros, and the way that Samsung is describing their chip configuration doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So it's going to be a 10 core CPU with one giant ultra core and three of the new Pro cores, which is similar to the new MediaTek. That's four big cores. But then they're still calling it the C Pro, C1 Pro. They're going to have six middle high efficiency cores. So I'm not really quite sure why that configuration is what Samsung went with. I totally get. So the Exynos has kind of held on to this older style of chip design where they have one really big CPU core and then three like medium cores and then four efficiency cores. They kind of changed that up a little bit, but generally we've been talking about that kind of configuration. So now we're getting one really big core and three big-ish cores. And again, that's what the Dimensity is doing. I miss the Dimensity being just four outright big cores and four outright medium cores, but that's again, I think that proved too expensive to manufacture consistently in the long term. So I'll be curious to see. This is going with the Eclipse 960 GPU. I can't remember. I really can't remember numbers from having used previous Exynos. I really haven't tested Exynos significantly in a while. Um, but I'll be kind of curious to see. Samsung has really struggled with power efficiency. And even though they're using ARM reference designs, these are ARM cores. It's not like Samsung's bespoke ARM cores or back like when there was that debate between like Hummingbird versus Cryo, and Samsung would have their own kind of chip design and CPU design. They're just going with the ARM CPU stuff. Um, but this is going to be, I think, a pretty close race between what we see from a TSMC fabbed Dimensity versus a Samsung fabbed Exynos. So the 2600, I think, will be interesting to check out. We'll definitely have to see if Samsung has been able to address their thermals, their power efficiency, if this is a chip that's going to run crazy hot, and then how that GPU performs in games, because I think this is going to be one of the least optimized GPUs outside of the Pixel 10. So the Pixel 10 Pro GPU is one of the worst performers we've seen in an expensive phone. Samsung has an opportunity to at least beat the Pixel. Even if it doesn't match the Adreno in the Qualcomm chip, as long as it beats the Pixel. How sad this has gotten now. It's just so rough. Um, from Vonnegut Rosewater, yeah, these tech companies have created a circumstance where the user is irrelevant, basically. And from Kevin Pitts, I was really hoping for more of the Samsung AMD chip combo. I thought I saw rumors that there was going to be some additional work between those two companies, but now I just don't know what that might look like. So we'll have to see. We're desperate for any competition. I hate Samsung as a company. I really do not like how they do business, how they work with their partners, how they try to put pressure on the media. But unfortunately, we need something else. And I've been really excited to see the work that MediaTek has been doing in this space. And I think Qualcomm is finally facing some kind of direct challenge to some of their more premium parts. Samsung has been irrelevant for the last couple of years. Anything they can do to kind of step that up at least opens the doors, opens some potential or conversation about where else you can go to get a component at a price competitive place. Even if like the Exynos 2600 is 10% less performant per watt than the Qualcomm, if it's 30% cheaper, that would be amazing. I would buy that product if it weren't in a Samsung phone. I'm so pissy about that. And lastly, I just want to wrap this up because this is another phone that I'm really anxious to see what the company does. We got the official images and video before the announcement. The Xiaomi 17 Ultra is going to get discussed very, very soon. But this is written up by Abid Asan Shanto over at Notebook Check. Xiaomi is gearing up to launch its top-end Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 flagship phone, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. We've got a look at what the phone is going to look like. It looks very Xiaomi Ultra. There isn't any rear ticker display like the Xiaomi Pro. It's a big circle on the back, just focused on the camera tech. There's this little launch teaser video where you can see this phone in a green, sparkled, jeweled jade green. It's got a Leica badge on the back, and it's got three camera sensors, 3 lenses. It's not gonna be a quad sensor phone like the Xiaomi 15 Ultra was. We've seen some of the rumors and some of the leaks, like holding up these telephoto periscope camera modules and how one is bigger than the other, and that's what we think is gonna go into the Xiaomi 17. So, I don't really feel that the Xiaomi Ultra has been consistently the bestest Ultra since the 14 Ultra. And one of the things that makes such a huge impact on using a massive main camera sensor is that variable aperture. If you're into photography and you have a little bit more control over how you handle light and depth of field and the different things you can do to craft the experience in the photo that you want, the 13 and 14 Ultras stood apart on that main sensor. Um, it really is unlike anything else you can shoot on. That is a sensor that is larger than Super 16 millimeter film. Feature films are still occasionally shot on Super 16. You can control and stop down. It's something like I used to love to do light trails as part of my photography testing. But as we've gotten into these larger sensors with shallower and shallower depth of field, it's hard to do something like go out to a freeway at night, focus exactly where you want the light trail to sort of generate, and not have just like one tiny line of focus with the rest of it getting blurred out. It starts to just look really messy. And you do that with a regular camera, you can do a longer exposure because you can stop down the lens and get a sharper image out of that setup. You want to do like a 20-second long exposure, you can stop it down and add a couple ND filters. When I hold up a phone like the 13 Ultra, because I didn't live with the 14 Ultra, I can put on some ND filters, stop down to f4, and I get this razor sharp clarity in a long nighttime exposure. And I can run the exposure for 30 seconds. I get these beautiful light trails. It's that kind of control. Or like I was saying with macro photos, I can screw on a macro lens, but if I try to do this at wide open aperture, especially because this aperture is going to be like f1.6 or 1.7, just a stupidly shallow depth of field. If I just put a macro lens on that, I won't be able to get a usable macro shot. The plane of focus is going to be so razor thin, nothing is really going to be in focus. But on my 13 Ultra, I can stop down to f4 and I can get a really beautiful flower photo in crystal clear focus, but the background is still wildly creamy blurred out and it looks really good. So I'm a little anxious. We're going to see the 17. The 17 Ultra looks to me like Xiaomi is really trying to fight Vivo. Triple camera. I think we'll still see something cool on the telephoto. If it's a larger module or if it's like actual optical zoom, that would be kind of cool too, kind of like what Sony does. But I also feel like it's gonna be yet another step less ultra than the 15 Ultra, which was already a step less ultra than the 14 Ultra. And the 13 to the 14 Ultra was kind of the best jump. That was kind of the best ultra change. The 13 Ultra had a two-stage aperture. The 14 Ultra had a variable aperture. Like the 14 Ultra was better than the 13 Ultra. The 15 Ultra is better in some ways and worse in others. It was a trade-off. And now I'm worried that the 17 Ultra is going to be better in one tiny little way, but then give up the flexibility of what we could do with the 15 Ultra. It's making me really anxious. The Xiaomi Ultra and the Vivo Pros are my two favorite phones of any year. They're the phones that I will actually use to get my work done. And now increasingly, they're going to be less good at getting that work done than some of my older phones here on my desk might be. If I can pick up a 15 Ultra and get a prettier macro photo out of the 15 Ultra than I can the 17 Ultra, why would I spend over $1,000 on a 17 Ultra. And it's the same, like the X300 Pro from Vivo is just slightly better than the X200 Pro in a lot of processing ways, but I didn't lose anything. If I compare my X300 Pro against my X200 Pro in camera tech, they're exceedingly similar. But the 300 Pro is getting me a few extra software and processing features that I don't have on the 200 Pro, so I'm okay. I can move from the 200 Pro to the 300 Pro. If I lose a whole camera sensor on the 17 Ultra, why would I retire my 15 Ultra? It's really tough. And the things that I wish Xiaomi would do instead are things like give me a dual conversion gain, give me better low light image, give me 12-bit video. Like those things that would improve the image quality that they could do on the phones that are currently out. That would be a market upgrade. That would be a huge improvement to the photo and video quality from the best camera sensors on a phone on the market today. But that doesn't seem to be what Xiaomi's interested in, which makes me very nervous how the 17 Ultra is going to play out. And because also it probably means that any accessories we had for, let me see. Yeah, any accessories that we had for the 15 Ultra probably won't work. That's annoying too. I was thinking like, hey, it would be really cool because like I've got my 15 Ultra and you can see like where the telephoto is versus just this empty space on the Leica label. And then if we look at the screen share of the 17 Ultra that got leaked, it looks like the telephoto flips to the other side of the phone. So even our accessories might not line up proper. I've got a plate for the 15 Ultra that I can use to attach other lenses and filters and stuff like that. And I don't think that any of this is going to work. I'm going to have to buy all new accessories for the 15 Ultra. So, I don't know. I'm really trying not to be doom and gloom. I want to be excited about the next gen Xiaomi, but I've been saying this so many times. 2025, you had to make some choices, but a phone from 2024 still could have been a legitimately better solution for your needs. Now, again, you can buy a new phone in 2026, and I bet it will have some feature improvements over phones from 2025. But increasingly, the value of buying a phone from 2025 might eclipse that. If you don't need 4K video at 120 frames per second in Dolby Vision HDR, like that's not something that you're working with for your footage, you'll probably be fine with an X200 Pro instead of an X300 Pro. If you don't shoot log in 4K at 120 frames per second, then this phone still does regular 4K video at 120 frames per second. You could save some money, get the X200 Pro with almost the exact same optical performance as the X300 Pro. That might be a value to you. You might save some cash and get an experience that's still a huge improvement over what you might be replacing it with. And I think 2026 is going to be a lot of that. But now you could maybe go back 2 years. Instead of getting a Xiaomi 17 Ultra, you might want to get a Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And that could be a better fit for your photography, for your needs, for your wants. And I would imagine the prices on a Xiaomi 14 Ultra would be pretty good. Oh, right. Sorry, I just Team Fry's jumping in a bit late to the party. Actually, Team Fry, we started crazy late. I've got to wrap this up because I cannot go super, super long. And we started late. From Lankagao. I don't know how to pronounce your username. I am so sorry. Is the Vivo X300 Ultra coming to global this time? Unfortunately, I will be one of the last techies to ever know. if the X300 is Ultra is going global, people with massive YouTube followings with millions of subscribers who will tell you that the phone is just okay and maybe you should buy a iPhone instead, they will find out first. So hopefully we get some information on that, but I do not know. And from last year, I liked the X200 Ultra, but I ended up sticking with the X200 Pro. I was really good with the X200 Pro. If the change is again just focal length on the main camera and a slightly wider aperture on the telephoto, I honestly think I'll be okay sticking with the X300 Pro again too. I just don't really I don't really feel like the changes on the X 300 the X200 Ultra were enough for me to switch that phone over. Obviously, a part of that was also just I wanted a global ROM, I wanted better band support, blah 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 blah. But I've been good, and those subtle differences, while they definitely made an impact, the way that I shoot and the things that I shoot and how I like to shoot, I actually kind of feel the Pro serves me better than the Ultra. I still wish it had a 1-inch type sensor though. That's what the thing I miss the most from the X100 Pro, which I still bring out of retirement from time to time because I have it right here. And this one still gets used because it still has things it does better than the X200 and 300 Pro. It's great. Um, from John Gao, I love that it's finally getting a flat screen, but we are unfortunately getting the iPhone like super flat, super rounded corners. And I wish it were just a little bit sharper. Again, just anything to kind of delineate the look from an iPhone. And I hate that all these manufacturers are just trying to make their phones look like iPhones. It further encourages people just go buy an iPhone. It doesn't make your brand look better. It makes the iPhone look legitimate and it makes you all look like copycats. At least it's still a circle on the back, right? It's not doing the visor look on the 17 Pro. Is it 17 Pro Max? Stupid, stupid name. Xiaomi, you're just really killing me here. But at least the Xiaomi 17 Ultra will still have a circle on the back of the phone, which is correct because that means camera. And boy, howdy, will we be able to get better photos out of a Xiaomi, a Vivo, or an Oppo than we will out of a Google, a Samsung, or a iPhone. Because man, they're just so far behind what's going on right now. Oh, John Gao, responding to Kevin Pitts, and I need to take a better look at this. The 15 Ultra, the Find X9 Pro, and the 300 X300 Pro global versions from Hong Kong should all support Band 71. Um, I don't know that I've tested that as well as I should. I'm really bad at testing network and carrier stuff because I live out in the burbs, and most of my walk around area, not great 5G coverage. From Team Vry, my biggest issue with the Chinese brands is that they try too hard to emulate iOS from a UI standpoint, which keeps me coming back to Pixel Samsung every now and then. But man, they have great hardware. So I don't even bother putting on custom launchers anymore. But I just really can't care that much about UI because camera tech is one of the things that I just live in. Yesterday, I'm doing so we're doing a clinic. My daughter is with 4 other cute little softball girls, and they hired a private coach to come in and do like fielding and batting drills. And then she was doing these really interesting like mechanic drills, like how to get your hips, swinging into your swing, how to keep your bat level, stuff that I like. This could really help my daughter. So a bunch of dads, 2 other dads with iPhones, right on top of their girls with the main cameras. It's making the girls super self-conscious. Dad has a camera in my face and he's going to use this to yell at me when my form doesn't look good when I'm hitting on tee. I'm way back with my Vivo using the telephoto sensor shooting 4K 120. And I show my daughter, "Hey, look, you did this drill 5 times in a row. Your 4th iteration, look at how precise your hand and your hips get into that action." And she didn't even know that I was shooting video of her. So all she's doing is paying attention to the coach. She's not looking at me shoving a phone in her face, right? I live in my camera. I live in moments like that. If it's practical, if it's mechanical, if I'm texting my wife, hey, I'm at Costco. Do you want this bag of gummy bears? Like, I just, everything to me is some kind of visual exercise or exploration or composition, even the mundane daily stuff. I don't even delete those photos just because it's fun to have like an old feed of, hey, 10 years ago, you were at Vaughn's and you took a photo of this cereal. And wasn't it cool when cereal was like $2 a box? Boy, those were fond memories. And I just don't like to let stuff like that go, the slice of life stuff. So if they rip off a few iOS features, I'm totally with you, Team Vry. I think it's stupid and annoying. I really more am bothered by the mechanical outward design looking so much like an iPhone because I don't want people to think I'm using an iPhone. I want people to see circle and go, "What the heck is that? Why is your phone so different?" And then I show them photos and they go, "Wow, can my phone do that?" And you can tell them, "No. No, your phone can't." It's not even an issue of are you getting good at being a photographer? Just literally your phone can't do this. I hate being that guy, but I love being that guy. So I'm willing to suffer stupid floating island UI elements because I cannot give Samsung money to keep giving me antiquated garbage hardware. I can't keep paying Google top money to give me stuff that's like 3 years out of date. So I'll take the hit on some UI elements that I think are stupid because I don't. Oh no! Where did that come from? Ah. Oh, I have a Pixel on across my office. Google's trying to sabotage my stream. Stupid Google. This is the Pixel 9. The Pixel 9 tried to wreck me. Let's turn you off because you're useless to me. Turn off. Power off. That was a hilarious way to wrap up this podcast. Excuse me. Also from Team Vry, I sent back the iPhone 17. I missed Android too much. We got the 17 Pro for my wife instead, as she's deeply integrated into iOS for her work and day to day. Brands trying to emulate the phone design takes me back to the early 2010s, especially with the first gen Galaxy S. Again, I'm totally with you. It is stupid annoying. But if my alternative is let me get a slightly different Android UI on a Pixel and then have camera hardware that would have been competitive against a Vivo X70 and CPU and GPU performance that struggles to beat a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It does beat it, but it struggles. I'm not buying that phone, dude. I have a Pixel 10 over here because I need to review it. It has become a timer. It has become a really fancy, let's test new features in Android platform. It is such a waste. I cannot fathom that this is the kind of competition we now have in the United States between Apple, Samsung, and Google. The Pixel is not a charming alternative. It is now just a higher priced, poorer performing solution. And that kills me because the Pixel should have been more than this. Especially with first gen. From Enrico Vids, iPhones don't have telephoto? Question mark. Um, so one of the dads there did have an iPhone Pro, and he still walked right up to shoot video with from the main camera. The other dad that I saw shooting was from an iPhone Plus, which is just a two camera, and I thought that only had an ultra wide. Yeah, I mean you can zoom in, but it's garbage. Like again, there's a reason why someone with an iPhone would just move up instead of pinching and zooming, right? You pinch and zoom in and then it's pixelated garbage. You're trying to get a good look at a mechanical action. to show an athlete what they could improve on in their form. And do you want it to be blurry and pixelated? And he's probably shooting it at 30 frames per second, right? So it's just chunky and blocky. And from an iPhone, a regular iPhone, not an iPhone Pro, what kind of optical quality are you gonna get with an image sensor that's now on most entry level phones? That guy spent $1,000 for a phone that has the same camera sensor as like a mid level Poco. So what kind of zoom are we really expecting, and what kind of quality and clarity should we really enjoy? I'm shooting 4K 120 from a telephoto that is larger than the main camera sensor on the iPhone. I think it looks really good. It just looks like really good video. It's just really good. And then I can slow it down to 1/4 speed. And she does this thing. She's holding onto this pole and she does this perfect hip swivel and catches this tennis ball. And it's just like, oh, she's such a little athlete. And she wasn't paying attention to me shooting it at all. So yeah, the iPhone probably can do 4K 120. Can the iPhone do 4K 120 from the telephoto? I genuinely don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't know. Someone let me know. Can the iPhone 17 Pro Max shoot 4K 120 from the dinky telephoto sensor that Apple has put into that camera? Was it a 1 over 2.7? Is that what they've got in there now? I know they finally upgraded from a 1/3 inch camera. Um, I think the biggest improvement for the 17 Ultra might be the 70 millimeter equivalent range with the Type 1 over 1.4-inch sensor. But let's see if we lose close focusing and how much worse the boxy bokeh look will be. So for the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, I'm really anxious. I saw like a thing where, hey, the camera module is getting way bigger. If they can improve on the housing so we don't cut into the bokeh, that could look really cool. But Xiaomi hasn't done close focusing from that sensor yet. So I'm hoping it's not just telephoto. That's going to kill me if we lose macro performance from a telephoto sensor. Because the the Xiaomi 15 Ultra has close focus on the medium tele, but we don't have close focus on the big sensor, on the big telephoto. That's again, it's just making me really nervous what Xiaomi might do with this phone. Do. Oh, Jimmy Fire Dragon is saying, yeah, they do have 4K 120 FPS log. John Gao is saying 4K 120 only on the main sensor for the iPhone 17 Pro. So now we've got conflict. Does anyone know for certain if the telephoto sensor on the iPhone 17 Pro can shoot 4K 120? I'm all abuzz. From Consumer Compute, 24 and 48 millimeter equivalents on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. I'm assuming you mean 4K 120 at 24 and 48, which would just be a 2 times crop from main sensor. Because let me tell you, 4K 120 from a telephoto is rad. It is so fun. So yeah, I'm gonna say let's leave it off there. I am pretty confident that the iPhone 17 Pro does not have 4K 120 at on the telephoto sensor. It is only available on the main camera. Enrico Vids, do iPhone users even know? It's confusing. I get confused about all the various modes on my Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Who could even know? No one could even know. This is hilarious. It's like another reason why I refuse to spend any time really living in or reviewing Apple products. Because, like, exactly the scenario that I've just shown off, and something I can do on my X200 Pro, shoot 4K 120 from that telephoto. It is stunning. It is so much fun. You get impossible, liquidy smooth real-time video that then you can stretch to 1/4 speed. And it is the sharpest clarity slow motion video. And why would you not want that from a sensor that is better than the main camera on an iPhone 17 Plus? I don't get it. How we can write off features like that, but then be like, oh, but the Pixel, it's got pretty good HDRs if you don't mind AI slop messing up your telephotos. That's not it, man. It's not it. So, um, we got to shut this down. I'm now running late, so I got to jump. I got to bounce. Apologies, everyone, for starting a little bit late. I have no idea what's going on with Restream, but Restream has failed me again. Do not do business with their products or services or platform. I'm mostly through the rest of my subscription. I will not be paying to re-up with Restream, and I'll have to spend more and move over to StreamYard or something like that. I'm very disappointed in that outcome. I'm very not happy about that. But look at what's happened. They kind of burned me on this. So thank you everybody who showed up. Getting just done a YouTube only stream. It was at least nice to see some friendly faces and knowing that like some folks that were over on Twitch or LinkedIn didn't get to play this week. There will of course be the audio replay, which you can catch on SomeGadgetGuy.com. And of course, the cleaned up audio version will be going to patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. We covered a lot of really heavy and dark news, and it is that time of year where, man, there's all the pressure of the end of the year and the holidays, and it can sometimes feel suffocating. It can sometimes feel inescapable. It can sometimes feel inevitable in a way that I don't want to discuss further. But my hope for you, as always, is keep your head above water, keep looking out for the helpers, and to keep taking care of yourself because others need a hand too. And it can help you work through some stuff if you're helping someone else also. So happy holidays, everybody. I'm going to try and do another stream next week. We'll see if my setup works next week. Who even knows? Um, but it'll be a very casual check-in pajama podcast next week. We can riff on holidays and gift giving and what games we're playing or what movies we're watching. Obviously, we've watched Die Hard a couple times this holiday season already. So I hope everybody out there that you're doing well. So I'll catch you back here next week, hopefully for another stream. And be safe. Take care of yourselves so you can keep being the amazing tech neighbors I know you can be. And all the other people out there who need that help, I hope they appreciate what you do for them. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel, sort of. Be safe. Take care. I love you all. I'll catch you back.